Drinking isn't the worst thing in the world for muscle growth or totally fine. It's all in between depending on how much you drink. And it really is linearly scaled. In extreme cases of lots of chronic drinking, what's that called? College, you're just not going to be nearly as jacked as you could have been if you just reduced your drinking to one night a week. And then on that one night a week, you had 4 or 5 drinks instead of 10 to 12. When I went to college, I knew guys that would train from 5 to 6 p.m., come home, shower, and start pre-drinking at 7. And you're just like, oh, man, why even go to the gym? Why are you doing this? Hey folks, Dr. Mike here with RP Strength, and today we are going to talk about alcohol's impacts on muscle growth. This is an update video. It's going to be quite lengthy and quite in full spectrum of all effects and all contingencies. We've had earlier videos on this a while back on the channel, but it's time to talk about it again because the crazy new facts about alcohol that they don't want you to know. Or do they? Tonight, news at 11? I got nothing. Let's just start the presentation. Let's first discuss how various levels of alcohol drinking affect your overall ability to grow muscle and recover and all the other stuff, and then get more specific. Now, this is expressed as average number of daily drinks. The first thing we're going to talk about is what it's like to just have 1 to 2 drinks on occasion. The rest of this is going to be 1 to 2 drinks per day on average, 3 to 4 drinks per day, and so on and so forth. So for 1 to 2 drinks per day on average, the reality is that the impact on anything performance and body composition, muscle gain, fat loss, sports, any of that is incredibly minimal with just 1 or 2 drinks on an occasion. So if you never really drink or you rarely drink and you have 1 or 2 drinks, it's going to affect almost nothing, including your health and your performance. Negligible effect on muscle growth, fat loss, recovery, especially if the alcohol is low in calorie, the mixers like water and mixers like diet drinks, then impact on body composition is also negligible. And if you train fasted the next day or with low glycogen, you might see a small dip in performance, but usually if you're eating relatively normally, it's not a big deal. So I'm here to tell you that 1 or 2 drinks out with your friends on occasion is just not going to make any kind of measurable or meaningful difference in your performance and in your jackness and your leanness. It's just not. It's not like a glass or 2 of alcohol is just like, that's it, man, you're done. It's just not going to make a difference. Now, 1 to 2 drinks per day on average is going to slightly slow fat loss because it does have calories in it and it reduces fat oxidation so the alcohol can get oxidated instead. It's going to slightly impact recovery, mostly fine unless you pair it with poor sleep. So if you have these drinks earlier in the day, it's better than later in the day. You will get some detectable testosterone suppression, but not enough to impact your gains, just enough to be detected, which is almost nothing. You might have a little bit of rapid eye movement, REM sleep reduction, and deep sleep reduction. If you drink it close to the evening time, it might lead to some mild fatigue, but usually it's not a big deal. So even 1 to 2 drinks per night on average is not a huge deal, but it's starting to make a difference. If you get 3 to 4 drinks per day on average, that's something. You get a noticeable hit in your recovery. You get muscle protein synthesis reduction. You get some more calories in and the proclivity to eat even more tasty high-calorie foods after, so your body composition, fat stuff might be not so great. You definitely get notable and slightly impactful testosterone suppression. If you do this chronically, you get a 10 to 15% reduction in testosterone production. That's not awesome. And maybe one of the worst of all is that you have more systemic inflammation, which alcohol tends to promote, and that's almost certainly going to impact muscle and joint recovery, and it kind of impacts the rest of your body, and it definitely impacts your health in a very, very definite way. So 1 to 2 drinks per day on average, you can still say is maybe a little bit bad for health, but you can do it for years and pay almost no downside. 3 to 4 drinks is you're going to be doing some paying that back. 5 to 6 drinks per day on average makes you seriously impaired in your ability to recover. Your soreness is going to last longer, and not because you're growing more muscle, but because your inflammation is kind of off the charts. The fatigue for your nervous system, especially central nervous system, increases. You're going to feel more sluggish, more tired, less motivated to train. You're going to get significant sleep disruption, especially if this alcohol is consumed closer to the evening. And especially deep sleep gets disrupted. And that's probably one of the best types of sleep for muscle growth and repair. So, geez, that's really bad. higher cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It makes things long-term not go well for recovery and adaptation. Lower testosterone. You get noticeably chronically dehydrated at this point, so your pumps are going to be much less, and your probability of injuring a muscle because it's dehydrated is going to go up. Real bad news. For shits and giggles, I included 2 extremely outrageous drinking ranges just to give you a complete picture. 7 to 10 drinks per day on average. I suppose the average person in the United Kingdom consumes this much alcohol. I kid. The Britons always know the good dry humor. You get a severe drop chronically in testosterone production, in growth hormone release. Your anabolic environment is kind of wrecked at that point. Not beyond repair, but definitely not in a good place. You're chronically dehydrated, which leads to increased probability of injury, lower performance, dog shit pumps, which just sucks. You now are much more likely to gain fat because you're getting a ton of alcohol calories, and your metabolism is so impaired by all the inflammation and alcohol that it doesn't even work as well as it should, and you gain even more fat than you're supposed to, even if you just account for the calories. But good news, you might even lose some muscle too. Inflammation and oxidative stress overwhelms your recovery, and so any attempt at recovery optimization when you're taking in 7 to 10 drinks per day on average is really just kind of like, if you insist, that it's really going all pretty much to nowhere. 11 or more drinks per day on average is probably going to mean that you're an alcoholic. In many cases, muscle breakdown on net outpaces growth. And so you end up having a situation where you just lose muscle chronically. And if you've ever seen someone who's drank a long time, that's usually the case. You're going to get some liver damage potentially, probably in this case. That's going to impair glycogen storage if you even care about a thing like that at these levels of drinking. Your energy availability for workouts drops off. Your cognitive and motor functions decline, which means worse technique, worse attention to detail, way worse motivation and effort. And you're now severely hormonally dysregulated, which means your estrogen is much higher, your testosterone is much lower, and your body is going to reflect it. So drinking isn't like the worst thing in the world for muscle growth or totally fine. It's all in between depending on how much you drink. And it really is linearly scaled. Now, let's look at some direct effects of drinking on muscle growth specifically, and then recovery specifically, and then sleep specifically, and then hormones specifically. After I'm done with this discussion, you might reconsider next time how much you drink and just choose to hit some kind of other drug. Scott, what are our party drugs of choice if we're not going to be drinking?
Molly.
What's up, Molly? Get that Molly in you. Get some white girl. JK, that's also really bad for you. Mushrooms.
Molly too. You're going to be moving. You're going to be grooving, burning cows.
Burning them cows, bro. Just get some protein in there and you're Gucci. You're going to be loving everybody. This is not an endorsement for psychedelic drugs, but think about it. Mushrooms, not really a party drug. I love to party on mushrooms, but I'm quite curious. Weed. Scott, is weed a party drug?
I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but I feel
Maybe.
like it's not so much.
Not so much, but it's fun. Unless you're a child, and then it's terrible. It's going to kill you. And Smokey the Bear hates you doing it. Direct effects of alcohol on muscle growth. It blunts protein synthesis, specifically after your workout, especially if you consume it post-workout. Not good. And part of the way it does this is it impairs mTOR activity, which is kind of the central governor of muscle growth. Not good. It can cause the dehydration of muscles, which is going to make you weaker, going to increase your chance of injury. And maybe the most important thing of all, it gives you really bad pumps. And so why do you even train if you can't get a good pump? I have no idea. Stop it. We need a good pump. Come on. We're orgasming together. Yes. Shit like that. Acetaldehyde, which is a byproduct of alcohol, metabolic downstream product that your cells break your alcohol down into, is toxic, of course, just like alcohol. And it increases muscle inflammation and slows repair by a long shot, which is a bad deal. And in extreme cases of lots of chronic drinking, what's that called? College, it can lead to muscle atrophy due to decreased protein turnover all over. That's unlikely unless you're really pounding it, but possible. I'll put it to you this way. If you are in college and you really like lifting and being jacked, but you're also drinking heavily 2 to 3 nights per week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes just Friday, Saturday, you're just not going to be nearly as jacked as you could have been if you just reduced your drinking to 1 night a week. And then on that 1 night a week, you had 4 or 5 drinks instead of 10 to 12. Big differences between those. because of these direct effects on muscle growth. But hold on, it gets worse. They are recovery-mediated effects. Because you could say to yourself, look, yes, but I take other things for muscle growth, so who cares? Hold on a sec. You get slower resynthesis of the carbohydrate stored in your muscles known as glycogen. This is what both powers a lot of muscle contraction, causes mega pumps, and facilitates the muscle growth process. So if you have less glycogen, it's just bad news all over. It increases oxidative stress, which leads to longer recovery times and more of that weird soreness that's not that deep, painful DOM soreness, but that kind of peripheral, strange soreness everywhere, and that's not good. Chronic systemic inflammation is bad, and this 100% is caused and made worse by alcohol. It reduces the absorption of nutrients. It reduces nutrient absorption efficiency. So if you eat a really good meal after drinking, some of that good meal just ends up in the toilet, and many of the nutrients just end up in the toilet as well and not on your body. Dehydration, definitely not good for recovery. And of course, the systemic inflammation makes this whole thing 10 times worse. But hold on, there's more. Alcohol messes up your sleep, which is a real tragedy because most people drink in the evening, which is the worst time of the day to drink. I know, this is all terrible news. Alcohol tends to reduce and or suppress REM sleep and deep sleep. This is where you learn reconfirm your motor learning patterns. So if you're working on good technique at the gym, you sleep on it, you wake up and your technique is more precise. Less precise if you drink. Bad deal. Through decreasing deep sleep, alcohol directly reduces your growth hormone release and your muscle repair. Folks, not good. It increases early night sedation, which means it can put you to sleep and keep you asleep for a long time. But the quality of sleep is so awful that you think you're getting a lot of sleep, but functionally you're getting very little actual good sleep to do good sleep things, which is real not great. It also leads to waking up in the middle of the night, waking up early in the morning with a super high cortisol level. Bad news. Of course, this leads to more fatigue, which means lower gym motivation, and it makes your consistency harder, and it screws up your gains. In addition to this, a lot of times it's really difficult to stay hydrated, especially if you drink in the evening and go to sleep. So in the morning, you're rehydrated, and either you go to the gym dehydrated or you have to rehydrate for a long time. Might take hours and hours. Bad news. And then there are hormonal effects that interact with all this and sometimes are separate. Especially chronic alcohol consumption lowers your testosterone levels. It increases cortisol levels, which leads to a more catabolic environment if chronic. And that's just real bad for muscle in the obvious way. It just burns your muscle off. Reduces growth hormone release, slowing tissue repair and hypertrophy and every other thing growth hormone does, including fat loss, joint recovery. Growth hormone really takes care of you. It heals you in every possible way. And when you have less of it, you get healed in every possible way less. Alcohol, especially chronic high amounts of consumption, actually reduce and disrupt insulin sensitivity. So food you eat when you're buzzed is more likely to go to fat than muscle than usual than if you eat if you're sober. That's really bad. And it tends to elevate estrogen, which in high concentrations with lower testosterone, which it also does, tends to make you less muscular and more fat. If you have high testosterone and pretty high estrogen, you get jacked and super strong. But with lower testosterone and high estrogen, you get fat jacked and much less muscle jacked. Not good. So at this point, you expect me to say, don't drink. And as folks who are newly sober or just very excited in the comments will say, just stop drinking, yarg, which I appreciate, and it's a fine idea. I got to dunk on you guys a little bit because you get kind of overzealous. The reality is, yeah, drinking's kind of poisoning yourself, but there are upsides to drinking. It's really fun when you do it with friends and you're the kind of person who gels well with alcohol. That's why people do it. It's just really fun. And because it's social and there's a time and a place for everything, like college, maybe you're interested in figuring out how do I drink but minimize the negatives? And I have absolutely tips for you. And the first tip, without beating this horse to death, the less the better. So how much to drink, the less the better. But the way I like to see it is if you can have an awesome time through the night with 5 or 6 drinks, don't drink 7 or 8. And something I've said before, which I stand by, is there's this perception of how much more fun you're going to have the more drunk you get, but that has this taper and U-shaped curve where it goes south real fast. So if you have 1 or 2 drinks, you're feeling it. You're really vibing with 3 or 4. 5 and 6 drinks is like you're just having fun with everyone. And you go to 7 or 8 and you just start not seeing shit. Your game slips up. You're like, hey, Brenda. She's like, hi, Mike. What's up? You're like, I like your titties. She's like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Like, sorry. You throw up on her. That's a nice Dr. James Hoffman flex, typical James game, which I love and respect. And actually it works a lot. But the reality is, ideally, you don't throw up on people. And ideally, you don't just like slur your words. Scott, you know that meme of that like guy who's talking to that girl at the club and she's just like doesn't want to hear it.
It's so good. He's like an inch from her face.
Like an inch from her face, yelling at the club, and she's like, I can't take this anymore. Like, he's not sober. Like, he's not anywhere close to sober. And if he wasn't that messed up, he could have a better time. So there's super drunk, and then there's just feeling the vibe and being tipsy and buzzed, and then there's sober. For people who like drinking, that middle ground really is where a lot of the fun tends to happen. But when you're there, you think, this alcohol got me there. Maybe more of it will get me even more fun. And that almost never works. Less is better, even if less means moderate and not extreme. And it'll save you a ton of muscle and health and all sorts of crazy stuff. So let's talk about specifics. Okay, less the better, great. Got that, fine. But how do we engineer this process? First of all, workout timing relation. Ideally as far apart from your workout as possible. Almost never before your workout. That's really stupid. And I would probably recommend at least one solid food meal and a few hours of chilling before you start drinking. And really, ideally, 4 to 6 hours. Get that protein synthesis going, get that mTOR going. Once it gets all of its processes in full effect, then drinking later after that is fine. But like when I went to college, I knew guys that like would train from 5 to 6 p.m., come home, shower, and start pre-drinking at like 7. And you're just like, oh, man, like, why even go to the gym? Why are you doing this? Wasn't there another time you can go to the gym that would be better? And the answer is almost every other time would be better. All right. Nutrition around drinking. Some of this you got to be real careful with. So I'll repeat the warning in a second. But if you drink on an emptier stomach, the alcohol hits faster and harder. And remember, there's really only one reason to drink alcohol unless you like disgusting tasting things. Alcohol snobs, I kid. It's to get drunk. And so if you eat a crap load of food, Scott, you ever had like 8 slices of pizza and then you and your boys start drinking and after an hour and a half, no one's drunk and you're like, what the hell is going on here?
It sucks. You're like, this is just a waste. I'm bloated,
pissed.
So crappy.
I'm sort of tipsy. I just have to pee a lot and nothing's happening. Take all those calories of alcohol and all the deleterious effects and just make them do their job by, not eating for 3 or 4 hours beforehand, drinking, and then, you're going to be having fun in no time. And don't drink all your drinks all at once. Get 1 or 2 drinks in you during pre-partying, another few during the party, and then every hour that the party goes by, have another drink to keep you at that level. And then after the party starts winding down, or as it starts winding down, stop drinking, continue to rehydrate. I'll say more about that in a second. And then you're Gucci, right? But a lot of people will be like 5 drinks down right away. Whoop, they get super drunk, and then they start feeling the falling off. They drink more, they start throwing up, and then everything's down the drain. So empty your stomach before you start drinking. And the good news is it leaves your system faster, which means after you are done drinking for the night, you're starting to rehydrate and eat some food. Then all of a sudden, by the time you go to sleep, the sleep disruptive effects are much less because the alcohol is not like waiting around in your GI tract to come out later throughout the night. Scott, have you ever woke? Of course, I know you have, so I'll just ask you just purely for form. Have you ever woken up almost as drunk or more drunk in the middle of the night than when you went to bed?
Nope, never.
My man, why would that ever happen? It's so confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, like what's happening?
It's awful. And sometimes you have to pee and you're like, how does that work?
Yeah, and then you're like starting to get hungover too. Like,
oh yeah. Oh my God. And it isn't drinking fun. In any case, big warning, it'll hit hard and it'll hit fast. So be smart. Don't do anything stupid and go passing out everywhere. Empty your stomach, but fewer drinks solves 2 problems. It gets you just as drunk as you would with many drinks, but not dangerously, but you're paying less of an alcohol cost and you're getting right what you want. During and after drinking, there's this rule that you should have like a glass of water or some diet soda or something every other, time with every alcohol drink, every other time is a glass of water. It's like a really well-meant rule by really nice people that ends up you're just spending hours and hours waiting in line at the club for the bathroom because you're just peeing all the time. So maybe that's not essential. Definitely have a few drinks of regular fluids in there. But as soon as you're done drinking, like when you're like, okay, we're shutting it down. We're getting an Uber back, to the hotel or whatever, or back to the dorm, however you guys do shit. Fluids right away. Probably one of the better drinks is to get some Gatorade or Powerade Zero. It tastes awesome when you're drunk. It's got electrolytes in it to hold that fluid in you and tons of fluids. Get you a couple bottle of those, start going to town on them, have fun. Foods with salt, carbs, and proteins are awesome at this point. Junk is okay because you're going to do it anyway. I know you are, but focus on higher protein and carb stuff. So if there's like some Chinese food you could get with a bunch of rice and chicken and stuff like that and some tasty sauce, that's better than just like straight up McDonald's to the face. Now, sometimes nothing tastes like Mackey's after you've had a few, and that's just part of living life. But I'm just here to say, keep your fats down a little bit, crank up the carbs a ton, keep the salts high, decent amount of proteins, keep the fluids going. You're just going to recover way, way better from drinking. Your sleep's going to be better. All that stuff is going to be awesome. If you can have electrolytes and water while drinking to minimize dehydration rather, it's awesome. I don't exactly know how you sneak like a Gatorade Zero. Scott, you're at like a really fancy bar and they're like, what are you going to have? You're like, hey man, I've been pretty heavy on the drinking. Let me just get some Powerade Zero. They're like, sir, they have a Powerade Zero reserve in the back cabinet. It's $100 per drink. You're like, it's worth it. It's worth it. Now let's talk about what to drink. Diet mixers and liquors are best because they have fewer calories. It's that simple and it impacts your body composition less. Light beers and hard ciders that are also light are next up. They're decent, better than regular. Regular beers and wines are not so great. Not your first choice, not your second. And probably the worst for body composition are like full sugar mixed drinks with, Scott, what are the Mexican shit's called? Margaritas? Yeah. A lot. So Mexican restaurants are amazing because like for the amount of money they charge you, I don't understand how it's economical for them to give you that much food. And that extends to the alcohol. Scott, what's the biggest margarita container you've ever seen at a restaurant?
Oh, they get crazy. They get like the fish bowls that are for like 4 people, like 96 ounces.
Bitch, there's a dead goldfish in that motherfucker. I can see him. She's like, oh yeah, it's like a sushi take on like margaritas. What? It's an insane amount. And those get you nice and drunk, but also it's like, I don't know, 180 grams of carbs or something. And like, gee whiz, it's like a pound of rice or something. That's crazy. And because it's liquid and it's sugar, you don't really like perceive anything in your satiety. So you just want the same amount of junk food after. It's a bad deal. Now, is it a part of living life to have a big ass margarita with your girlfriends every now and again? Like, oh my God, Stacy broke up with Kevin. We're celebrating. Margarita. Stacy's drunk. She's stabbing people. Classic Stacy. Totally cool. But to make it a regular thing, your body's gonna look like you drink regularly, which is not a thing you want to look like. Scott, can you imagine like you find a person at the gym, you're like someone else, you're like, what does that guy look like? And their first guess is like someone who drinks a lot. Not really a good thing.
Not what you want to hear.
Not what you want to hear. Wouldn't that be like, because a lot of the people that drink a lot are still very young and have like really like awesome like sorority girl bodies. She's like flirting with you. She's like, you're like a fitness guy. You're like, yeah. She's like, what do you think I look like? You're like, you look like someone that drinks a lot. You just stare her down. What do you think? Are you getting laid after or what?
And it depends how you follow it up. You got to neg and then you got to like bring it back,
That's the part I'm bad at.
You just go straight negs.
Okay. Let me bring it back. All right. Like, yeah, you look like you drink a lot. She's like, she kind of looks at you like, seriously, it's disgusting.
Yep, then you went too far.
Oh.
Too far.
Let me try another one. Yeah, you look like you drink a lot. Oh my God, stop. Just kidding. You're pretty.
Oh, thanks.
Let's go glug glug together. Yeah, I knew that would work. I've got infinity game. My game's got game. So full sugar drinks, just understand it's the worst thing you can choose. Now, ChatGPT tells me in its infinite wisdom that dry wines, like red and white wines that are dry, are slightly better than sweet wines for that lower sugar impact. To be completely honest, if you know the difference between wines, you're some kind of uppity motherfucker that like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Just ask your butlers to like, I don't know, get you in shape for you because they work out I don't even know. They're doing it for you at that point. Scott, do you know different kinds of wine?
Heck no. I'm not a wino.
Wine goes down the throat. That's what I know about it. And then it comes right back up, functionally unchanged a few hours later. Here's a big one. Times to drink. This is messed up because the advice is backwards, fellas. And I'm just going to cut you the real deal because it's the only thing this channel is about is just cutting you the real deal every single time. Because alcohol screws up your sleep so much, and because sleep is so critical for your optimum body composition, body fat, muscle gain, performance, etc., the best advice for when to drink, if you're going to drink, is the earlier the better. Ideally, that means morning drinking. Am I telling you to start drinking in the morning on this channel? If we assume the premise is drink, then yes. That doesn't mean drink throughout the rest of the day. It just is what it is. Cut it off by the afternoon, eat well, etc. Take a couple blunt hits. You're Gucci. Everything's great. What a great day of fun with drugs. Now, a lot of people are just like, what? That's nonsense. I'm not going to do that. The parties are in the evening. Got it. Okay, but there's a way to play this. If you're drinking in the evening, cut it off at least 3 to 4 hours before bed for much better sleep and much better effects on your muscle and fat loss, which means that a few things. If you're at the club and you notice that like you look at your friend, you know, like Marissa or whatever, and she's got that thing where her eyes are kind of half rolled in her head and she's still dancing. And you're like, well, my Marissometer says that typically this is when she's going to start throwing up on people and passing out. And when we get kicked out and we have to go get a cab. So I was going to order another drink because I'm feeling the swag, but like we ain't going to be here for much longer than about 5 minutes. As a matter of fact, I'm the only sober person here, sober enough to drag her out so she can throw up on the stoop of the club instead of usually in the bouncer's feet, and then you really get kicked out. So when you notice that the shit's starting to kind of unravel and you guys have partied a little, Scott, you know what I'm talking about? When you look around and you're like, there's only so much life here left.
Yeah, it's time to wrap it up. And
you know it deep in your heart. And Scott, you ever notice like, the fun-loving part of your brain rebels against this knowledge? You're like, no, we can save this.
Yeah.
But you know, like it's done. You look at your boy and he's like, hey, man. You're like, nah, man, Kevin's done.
Like in New York, you'd be out at like the after hours clubs and it'd be like 4:45 and you're looking around and it's just weird. And everyone's like so up. You're like, it's time for us to get out of here.
It's just zombies now.
Yeah.
And there's always a friend of yours. They're like, dude, more drinks? And you're like, man,
absolutely not.
Shut up. So the least thing you could try doing, don't be that guy who's like rounds at 3 a.m. It's over, bro. The party's over. There's always tomorrow and like lifetimes more partying. For some reason, drunk people, as soon as they get into that vibe, they like want to have all the fun they're ever going to have that night. And it's just not how it works. So be strategic, cut it off. The benefit is like, you're not going to feel nearly as bad the next morning. You're going to be able to eat tons of food. And when you get home and it's still a few hours left for that 3 to 4 hour window to close, just like, I don't know, like play some video games or, you know, call up someone in a different time zone and chat with them or talk to ChatGPT. It's fun when you're drunk. I'm sure it's fun when you're sober. It's got to be great when you're drunk. Tell it that you're drunk. It loves shit like that. So 3 to 4 hours before is great. And the real world tip here is to be pretty sober, more sober than you were, and refed and rehydrated. You want to have lots of food in your stomach. You want to have lots of fluids to the point where you're like, oh man, I can't really drink anymore because it takes a while for them to get from your GI tract into your muscles and rehydrate everything that alcohol dehydrated. So cut off 3 to 4 hours before sleep, immediately start getting food and stuff, which is like why I think an excellent cultural practice in this regard is like the junk food or diner or restaurant run after going out to the club. Like people who go out to the club and then just come home and just like face plant into the couch, like they're going to be waking up in bits, man. Like that's not the way to do it for anything. But if you go and get some food with your friends, chill, laugh, have some regular drinks, not alcoholic drinks, then all of a sudden you're having fun. It's cool to unplug after the party and come down with your friends and kind of make fun of whoever threw up and slap high fives with whoever got laid or whatever. And it's great. So that's a thing that you can do kind of as a rule that'll really, really enhance your ability to get leaner and more muscular without alcohol impacting it as much as it normally would. And as far as how to gel this in with party culture, another piece of advice I have is there are kind of like maybe 5 peaks you can have or opportunities you can have to express your drinking vibes during a typical evening. Happy hour is the first. Dinner is the second. Pre-drinking is the third. Regular in the club, in the mix, in the bar stuff is the main one. It's the fourth. And the fifth one is the late rally person. Scott, this conversation we just had, like that late rally asshole that like figures out we're partying at 2 a.m. and is like, I want to do this now. If you want to optimize your muscle stuff, just be the star of the whole show earlier rather than later. There's always a guy that's the life of the party when it's 2:30 in the morning. Don't be that guy as much if you care about your muscles and your fat. Be the happy hour psycho. Be the guy who's drunk at dinner. Pre-drinking, you're already halfway there and everything's super fun. You're really setting the mood. Have a ton of fun at the actual party, at the club, but then the late drinking, just don't do it. And you've kind of solved the matrix, and all of a sudden you're getting a ton of fun with your friends, doing the drinking thing you seem to like so much. And at the same time, it's just not making nearly as many downsides for your physique, your health, your recovery, and all of that stuff. So just keep things in balance and keep things in perspective. There are college kids, maybe you're one of them, that like to drink and have some fun and want to be jacked, but it's not the number one thing. Then listen, fellas, you feel me? Take your 3 drinking nights of the week and get them down to 1 to 2. Take your 7 to 15 drinks per night and take it down to 5 to 7. And all of a sudden you're doing mega real world improvement for yourself. And at the same time, having tons of fun, and you're not super worried about ultra specific muscle fractions. But if you're a competitive bodybuilder, when you drink, especially if you're like in pre-contest, it just doesn't occur to me that you would ever do something that profoundly idiotic, for lack of a better term. So if and as you get more serious about fitness, drinking is just not really on the menu very often. But if you're just like, trying to get fit and fun and you're super young and like drinking's the thing you and your friends do, just constrain it, do a little less of it, do it smarter so you get the same effect of drunkenness, but without a bunch of the BS or as much of it. Do it a little earlier in the day rather than later. Cut yourself off early, drink on an emptier stomach, drink more low-cal stuff. And then you're kind of optimizing a space that you chose, but at least you're getting more out of it and getting fewer downsides. If you want to get more out of organizing your training, your diet altogether, then we do have the RP Hypertrophy app. It exists. And the RP Diet Coach app is something that you can use to plan out your meals, and it'll remind you of stuff too. And if you pre-make your meal for the evening and then you go out and get drunk and you come back and you're sitting there watching TV, your app will actually ping and tell you, hey, you got a meal. And you're like, oh shit. And you go to the fridge and you already made it. Success. Am I saying that the RP Diet Coach app can empower you to drink? No, but if you're going to drink, then it can help you because it never judges you. There is a different mode you can activate which judges you for everything, but that's more money. Folks, have a good drink when you're out at night. Make sure to say plenty of jokes to your friends that reference the TikTok Dr. Mike Core, whatever the hell goes on TikTok. Fine now. Peace, homies.